Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Washington was the unofficial Pac-12 North Champion in 2020. The Huskies went 3-1 and would have been playing for a Pac-12 championship, but could not play in the championship game due to COVID. Now the question is, with a regular and normal season ahead of them, can the Huskies claim a real Pac-12 North title in 2021? So again, guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, here to predict Washington's schedule and record for this 2021 college football season. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below. That includes our brand new expert picks, guys, over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best spread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the country. Make sure to go sign up today before the season begins. I promise you, you're not going to want to miss out. So let's take a look at Jimmy Lake and the Huskies. Jimmy Lake's first year with Washington went as planned. It was great. 3-1, would have been playing for a Pac-12 title despite the shortened season. I think they exceeded expectations, guys, by going 3-1. But now they enter 2021 with a much more difficult schedule ahead of them, but with also tons of talent. And we'll start on the offensive side of the ball, where everybody's basically back. This team averaged 30.2 points per game last year, but were just middle of the pack within the conference when it came to rushing and passing. They were just 9th in the conference when it came to total offense at 402.8 total yards per game. And that's the crazy thing, guys. Washington was averaging over 30 points per game in those 4 games. And yet still, they were right in the middle of the Pac-12. They weren't even at the elite level of offenses within the conference. And that has to change if they not only want to win the division, but win the conference as a whole. And that all starts at quarterback. Dylan Morris was the starter last year, threw for nearly 900 yards, 4 touchdowns, to just 3 interceptions. But will he be the starter this year? Or will Sam Huard be the starter this year? The 5-star quarterback, the 5-star recruit, highest rated recruit at quarterback in Washington football history. That's $1 million question. It could be a case where Morris starts, and Huard takes over later. But quarterback is going to be the key, because we know Jimmy Lake wants to run, and he has the guys to do it, starting with Sean McGrew, who rushed for over 227 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. They averaged 176.2 rushing yards per game in 2020. That number can stay about the same, maybe even improve in 2021. Defensively, that was Jimmy Lake's strength. When he took over for Chris Peterson, he was promoted from defensive coordinator to that head coaching position. So we're always going to expect Washington's defense to remain strong. They allowed just 25 points per game last year. They had the number 1 passing defense in the conference last year, allowing just 185 passing yards per game. And they ranked 27th in the nation, allowing just 346.2 total yards per game. The front 7 is an absolute strength. Ryan Bowman, Jackson Sirmon, both returning at linebacker. It's the secondary, guys, that even though they have the number 1 passing defense in the conference, it's the secondary that could be the most sketchy part of this defense that might need the most work. But overall, guys, the pieces are in place for Washington to have a big year, the first real year of the Jimmy Lake era up in Seattle. So we take a look at their schedule. Before you even break it down, you just take a look at it. The road game at Michigan speaks levels. That's going to really set the tone for the season. It's going to really show what this young Washington team is made of. And youth is a major part of this year. Michigan at Stanford is a trap game. Of course, Oregon is the game that could determine the Pac-12 North. And right after Oregon, they host Arizona State. So right then, they're hosting arguably the top team in the North and arguably the top team in the South, both of them coming to Seattle. The opportunities are there for Washington to have a very, very special year. We believe they kick off the year with a win against Montana. I don't think we have to discuss much on that game, but they will defeat Montana. They then travel to Michigan. These two teams have not met since 2002. It's a bit of an old rivalry because even though they haven't met since 2002, these two teams did meet in 4 Rose Bowls. 4 Rose Bowls from 1978 to 1993. Michigan won 2, and Washington won 2. Obviously playing in the big house in a post-COVID year where home field advantage may play a bigger role than we've ever seen. is not ideal. It would have been more ideal for Michigan to come to Seattle like they should have done last year. Michigan and Washington, to me, are very similar. Both teams are very defensive-led. The Wolverines returned 9 on defense, only 3 on offense. Both teams are very defensive-led. Neither's going to have very electric offense. The question for Michigan is, in one game, this is week 2, so in their first game, can they find a quarterback they're comfortable with? Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy, Alan Bowman, the transfer from Texas Tech. They've got to find someone to lead this offense and lead it efficiently, because it's always been an issue under Jim Harbaugh. And I look at this game, guys, and I say, does Washington have the experience and the talent offensively to exploit a solid Michigan defense on their home turf in the Big House? That's what this game comes down to for me. And right now I'm saying no. I believe Michigan wins this game over Washington. I believe their defense and home field advantage in the end is too much. And in a low-scoring game, it's the Wolverines that get the best of the Huskies. Again, the first meeting since 2002. Washington returns home to take on Arkansas State, a team in the Sun Belt that should improve drastically now. Butch Jones, the champion of life, former Cincinnati, former Tennessee head coach, former assistant to Nick Saban, is now the head coach in Jonesboro for the Red Wolves. So it should be for an intriguing matchup. Remember, Arkansas State did go on the road and defeat Kansas State last year. So it is possible to get a win over a Power 5 team on the road, but we do believe that Washington defeats the Red Wolves, and they're now 2-1. They then get into Pac-12 play right there at the end of September. We're going. It's time. And their first game is at home against California. California has won the last 2 games against Washington by a combined 3 points. They've won the last 2 games against Washington by a combined 3 points. That's unreal. So Washington has fallen short against the Golden Bears the last 2 meetings. I do not believe that will be the case in 2021. I believe the Huskies do beat California. Yes, they return 8 starters on offense. Yes, they have the most experienced quarterback in the conference in Chase Garbers, if, of course, he can stay healthy. But to me, right now, California's defense is usually a strength under Justin Wilcox. It could be their downfall in 2021. Not saying they're going to have a bad year, but if you're looking for a weaker link, it actually could be slightly on the defensive side of the ball, as they allowed 169.2 rushing yards per game. We know Washington wants to run the ball. I think they do it effectively here. They're 1-0 in conference play. They then travel to Oregon State. They only beat the Beavers by 6 last year, just 27-21. But here's the problem for the Beavers. They lose their biggest offensive playmaker, the guy who was responsible really for their 2 wins last year in Jamar Jefferson. Unbelievable running back for Jonathan Smith in Oregon State, but he's gone. Everybody else on offense is back pretty much. Tristan Gebbia, a transfer quarterback now, and Sam Neuer from Colorado. But can they get anything going in the passing game after being so run-heavy last year and relying so heavily on Jefferson to do everything? That's the million-dollar question. I don't think they can do that. I do not think their defense is up to par. They allowed 217.6 rushing yards per game. Jonathan Smith is slowly finding himself on the hot seat. Even though the game is at Oregon State, I believe Washington gets the best of them. And after 1 loss at Michigan, they're 4-1 going into their bye week. Things are looking good for Jimmy Lake and the Huskies, guys. And again, those first 2 conference games could be worse. They're not against some of the most elite of Pac-12 opponents. So 4-1. Bye week, UCLA. Another tough game, guys. This is one of those trap games for everybody that plays UCLA. Anybody that plays UCLA this year needs to watch out. Because the Bruins under Chip Kelly are returning 19 starters. That includes their dual-threat quarterback in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It includes Britton Brown at running back. It includes their top 2 wide receivers. And it includes a defense that actually wasn't half bad. Only allowed 135.7 rushing yards per game. But the kicker here for UCLA and their downfall is their secondary. They returned 10 starters on defense, but their defense passing last year allowed 274.1 passing yards per game. It's one of the worst in the country. 114th in the country to be exact. So I expect Dylan Morris or Sam Huard, whoever is under center for Washington, to have a big day at home. They're going to be well rested, get that bye week in Seattle against a poor secondary of UCLA. The defense is well rested, enough to stop a dual-threat quarterback in Thompson-Robinson. I think that UCLA drops this game. Washington gets a win, but it might be close. UCLA is going to be a tough out for everybody this year. The Huskies then travel to a Friday night game at Arizona. Chalk it up as a win. And I don't mean to disregard Arizona so much, but you could make the case that Arizona will be the worst team in the Pac-12 this season. 0-5 last year, brand new head coach now in Jedd Fisch. They've got potential to start a freshman quarterback one way or another, unless they go with Jordan McLeod from South Florida. One of the worst defenses in the country last year, all of it combined. 39.8 points per game allowed by the Wildcats last year. It's embarrassing. I don't think Washington struggles at all against the Wildcats, who could possibly go winless in conference play. After that, guys, it gets very tough for Washington. If you watched our schedule previews for the Huskies, we kind of highlighted that the final 5 games of the year are the most difficult for the Huskies. They are going to breeze through the first part of their schedule. And when they come into Stanford, guys, right now we have them sitting at 6-1. Have them sitting at 6-1. If they beat Michigan, there's a good chance they're 7-0 coming into the game at Stanford. Which means not only are they Pac-12 title contenders at this point, but we're talking potential playoff at this point too. But then you get at Stanford, Oregon, Arizona State, and Seattle, top in the North, top in the South. Trap game against Colorado, and the Apple Cup against Washington State. It gets tough in the final 5-game stretch. It's going to define the season for Washington. Well, this game at Stanford scares me a lot for a lot of reasons. First off, you could very well see Washington looking ahead to Oregon. Looking ahead to that Pac-12 North showdown, the one that could determine the division. Big-time rivalry game. You don't want to look ahead to that. Stanford also gave Washington their lone loss last year. Defeated the Huskies 31-26. The Cardinal won their final 4 games. They started clicking at the right time. When you look at Stanford, we know their defense is going to be their strength. 8 returning starters. Their secondary is elite. Their linebacking core is elite. It's going to be very, very strong. The offense, we don't know yet. Davis Mills is gone. Jack West is in at quarterback. How he plays will determine how well Stanford does. But from a historical standpoint, Stanford has won 6 of the last 8 games against Washington. And I think Jack West does just enough in this game, and Stanford's defense does just enough in this game to get the job done for David Shaw and the Cardinal. At home for Stanford, Washington on the road, possibly looking ahead to Oregon, elite defense, not having much success against the Cardinal over the last decade or so. All signs to me point for a loss for the Huskies, and that's what we're going to predict. They drop the game to Stanford going to this Oregon game. So the game against Oregon could lose a little bit of its luster. It could, but it still will determine the North. Because Washington's only losses are to Michigan and Stanford. Only one of those is a conference loss. So if they were to beat Oregon, Washington would then own the tiebreaker over the Ducks if Oregon were to finish with only 1 loss, obviously. It comes down to 1 loss in conference play. Washington's going to own that tiebreaker. So this game is still huge. In Seattle, potential revenge on their mind, not just for the loss they were handed in 2019, but because they had to watch Oregon win the Pac-12 last year when Washington felt like it should have been them. They feel like they should have been playing in the championship game instead of Oregon, but couldn't do anything about it because of COVID. When you look at Oregon, guys, they've won 14 of the last 16 games against the Huskies. So like Stanford, Washington has struggled against the Ducks. Big-time rivalry game, they've dropped 14 of the last 16. Oregon's defense, I believe, will be one of the best in the country. Kayvon Thibodeau up front, Noah Sewell at linebacker, Verone McKinley III in the secondary. They're elite at all 3 levels. Defensive line, linebacker, and the secondary. You look at the offense. Joe Moorhead comes in again. RPO-style offense. Anthony Brown's going to run it better than Tyler Shuck ever did. Travis Dye, C.J. Verdell, top 2 wide receivers. This Washington team is a lot younger than the Oregon team. Oregon certainly has much more experience from a coaching standpoint, from a player standpoint. And I believe when I look at this game, the one area where Oregon does not own the edge is home field advantage. And we've seen the Ducks overcome that before. And I do believe that Oregon will come on the road and take down the Huskies, and in doing so will most likely clinch the Pac-12 North. And I know, Washington fans, that's not what you want to hear. You're going to hate me for that, and I'm sorry. But I just think you're still a little too young right now, and I don't have enough faith in your offense to put up the points and exploit this Oregon defense that, again, I think could be one of the best, not just in the country, and obviously will be one of the best in the Pac-12. I think the Ducks get the job done here, and they'll be legitimate playoff contenders in the final weeks of the season. Washington plays Arizona State the week after. How does Arizona State respond to these recruiting violations? We don't know. We don't even know what the repercussions will be for those. And that could honestly change our prediction for the Sun Devils later on this year. But I don't think it's going to matter for this game, because we're going to pick Washington to beat the Sun Devils. I'm going to tell you right now, Washington will beat one of Oregon or Arizona State. I don't think they beat both, but they'll defeat at least one of them. And I believe it comes right here against Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils. I believe Washington's defense shuts down Arizona State's running game, one that averaged 264.2 rushing yards per game, but some of those numbers are skewed because of their last game against Arizona. I believe they've created enough pressure on Jaden Daniels, one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, and angry after a loss to Oregon. We're not going to say they're hungover. We're going to say, hey, look, yeah, we lost back-to-back games. We got to get back on the winning track. Jimmy Lake gets his team into shape, and they defeat Arizona State at home. And a much-needed win, and it's still a quality win, as the Sun Devils could be a top 15 team at this time. They play Colorado on the road on November 20th. Very similar to the likes of Arizona State, very similar to the likes of UCLA, and many other teams we've mentioned. Jimmy Lake has to preach stopping the run because Colorado has a dual-threat quarterback in Brendan Lewis, and they've got a dynamic running back duo in Jarrett Broussard and Alex Fontenot. They want to run the ball. They averaged over 200 rushing yards per game last year. But Colorado's defense is, again, the downfall for the Buffaloes. Carl Durrell's doing great things in Boulder. He's turning things around there. They're going to put up some points. They're going to put up some yards on you, but their opponents are going to do the exact same to them. And despite the game being in Boulder, a game where I absolutely see it being a trap game, especially with the Apple Cup coming the week after, don't want to look ahead again like they did with Stanford, I believe Washington has just enough to take down the Buffaloes. And then in their season finale, the Apple Cup against their in-state rival, we see two new coaches going at it. For the longest time, it was Chris Peterson and Mike Leach. Well, last year we didn't have an Apple Cup. We didn't get to see Jimmy Lake take on Nick Rolovich for the first time. Well, now we see that. A new era for both of these programs. Washington State has lost 7 straight games to Washington. So the Huskies have won 7 straight Apple Cups. They've won 10 of the last 11 Apple Cups against the Cougars. And I think you can go ahead and make it 8 straight and 11 of the last 12. Because I don't think Washington State's defense, a defense allowed over 300 passing yards per game last year, is going to be up to par to take down the Huskies. And like Washington, they're still very young. Young quarterback in Jaden DeLora and a coach that's still trying to implement his scheme, that run-and-shoot scheme. That's going to take, I think, at least one more year for Nick Rolovich up in Pullman. So Washington wins this game. Jimmy Lake gets his first win in the Apple Cup, keeps the tradition alive of defeating the Huskies, or defeating the Cougars the day after Thanksgiving. Washington finishes 9-3 in 2021. And I know everybody's going to be disappointed with that. You think you can win 10, maybe 11 games, and you want to win the North, and that's going to be decided on November 6th against Oregon. I just don't think the Huskies are quite there yet. But 9-3 has you in the mix, possible mix for a New Year's Six bowl game. If not, you're still going to go to a very high-caliber bowl game, a shot at a double-digit win season. And after everything we endured last year, and going into just year 2 with Jimmy Lake, that's something to be very excited about, because that means even bigger things are ahead for such a brand new head coach. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Also, make sure to check out everything down in the description below where we have exclusive content for you left and right, including those brand new expert picks. Sign up for those today before the season starts. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.